Well, hello everyone from Cornerstone. It is great that you guys are joining us today. I'm here with Nate Sand. I'm excited to be here. My name is Logan White, if you guys don't know me. And we're going to be talking with Nate a little bit, getting to know him, and then hopefully giving you guys a chance to get to know Nate as well. So we're just going to talk a little about your story and have some questions from you sent in by our cameraman and also a couple other people from church. So first of all, Nate, you just want to maybe tell a little bit about your story and just how you got here today in life.
Right. Let's start from zero to...
Yeah, every day, every moment, every minute, please. We'll
I love that.
It'll be a live stream, so I was like...
Well, let's see. The story actually starts even before I was born. I would have to say that my father came to Christ as a teenager back in Cambodia and actually received a Christmas card, can you believe this, from an Alliance missionary. Went to the mango tree and heard about God, heard about his love for us, and it all just clicked for him, made sense. Now, mind you, my father was actually at that age, teenager still, the oldest in his family, so there was a lot of pressure put on him to continue the family business. Now, the family business was making Buddha idols, right? So that's like my son becoming a Satanist, right? Like that's equivalent to what we're talking about here, because he became a Christian and family immediately just rejected him, said just disowned, and our family came from a line of like jewelers, so they made lots of money and things, and when he decided to follow Jesus, he really lost everything, and that was huge, because now this is in the context of the war, which is like a genocide of a couple million Cambodians. So we see this as providence looking back, because my father got out of the family, but half of his family was demolished or destroyed by the war, right? And so my dad came to the States, went to Bible school in the Philippines for a little bit, and then came to the States, started to plant churches here in California, Southern California area. And I was then, obviously born here, but kind of grew up in that milieu of church planting, of him discipling others. But he would always go back into Cambodia. And amazingly, his testimony is really powerful. My grandfather just hated my dad for what he did. One, for giving his life to Christ, the second for pretty much casting off the family. But my father kept helping out and coming back and loving on them, so that by the end of my grandfather's life, he gave his life to Christ. My grandmother did too, after so much turmoil and pain, right? But they saw how my father's love continued to keep on going back to the family. And I witnessed that, right? And I remembered, like, the one time I saw my dad cry was when he read that letter from dad, or from granddad, right? And just, man, that was heart-wrenching for me. But I also started from there birthing this idea of, what is God to me, right? Like, I saw this in a generation ahead of me and his story. Now it came to, like, what does this mean for me, right? So I'd say about age of 17 was when I gave my life to Christ. So that was, it was a pretty long journey. I was in the church atmosphere. It didn't mean I was a Christian, right? Like, just being in McDonald's doesn't make you a cheeseburger, right? Like, you have to, be essentially, there, right? And I was present, but not there, if that makes sense, right? Like, I was in the church, but not of the church, if that makes sense too. So I'd say about 17 was when I really journeyed on, is this my faith or not? Because my father actually battled cancer, and that was a rough time. And I started saying, well, God, if this man who loved you, who went through all this, through the wars and all this, and this is how he gets paid, for all the service and love that he's given you, I don't know if I really believe in this, right? So there was a little bit of angst in me, obviously. So I went on my own journey at that age. It was doing some honors bio stuff, and obviously it was just high school stuff, but they made us do research on evolution. So I went back and read Origin of Species and all kinds of Darwin books and other commentaries and things like that, or books that were just about it. And then just compared that with Buddhism, which was would I just go back to my root religion, and even other worldviews. And what made most sense to me was the Christian worldview, right? Like that there is order, that there is sense here, that there is something deep and dark and broken about us. All of these things made so much sense to me. And the explanation that the scriptures had were the best fit, as in my understanding. And then I think that actually it was in my room by myself at night that God really just wouldn't let me sleep and just grabbed a hold of my heart. And he just said, I'm here. And like almost an audible voice, I am here and I love you, right? Like I just couldn't let that go. And I was like, whatever, right? But this kind of tug of war was going on until I finally just said, all right, Lord, if you are, I want to be yours. I want to give everything, right, in my life. And I remember like tears coming out, and I was just like, I'm not even sad. What's going on here? It's so weird. But that was, yeah, my life moment, right, where I gave my life over to Christ. It wasn't a church. It wasn't even a sermon. It was literally like the Holy Spirit just nudging me and grabbing hold of my heart. And yeah, I'd say 17 years old, that was when it happened for me.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah, man.
What is, I think everyone would be interested to hear, like, kind of what is,
For sure.
17, and then when did you decide to jump into, like, a ministry, and this, being
Absolutely.
a pastor, and what does that maybe, like, call to ministry look like? And,
Yep.
And also, I think people love to hear, like, what have you been doing in ministry recently? I know
sure.
you've been in it for a while now, so I think people love to hear that.
I know, I look a lot younger than I am. I'm really a lot older. So I've had about 20 years of ministry in me. So that's a lot. And yeah, so 20 years ago, I was about there, 17, and then basically what happened was I gave my life to Christ, and then about 2 or 3 years into it, just grew rapidly through other mentors that came into my life. Chuck Swindoll was a huge influence on me, just listening to him on the radio, reading books, and I just couldn't get enough of Scripture was the biggest thing. It was so weird. Like, I just knew the Holy Spirit did something deep in me, right? Where He just made me hunger for the Word, hunger to be around people who love the Lord. And I wasn't leading Bible studies or anything yet. It was about 2 years, I just say. I would just read, learn, absorb. And I back then was in a Cambodian church my father planted like a long time ago. And it was a small church, only about 30 people were there. The youth group was maybe about 10, 15 kids. I was part of that youth group. My brother was leading back then. And eventually what ended up happening was, over time, I just started sensing God's calling to just share what I've learned about Him, right? And so with this group of people, we started this youth conference where we connected with other churches, because we're all small churches, and we ended up doing like youth conference for like the Cambodian churches, right? And so that was kind of the intro into ministry. And then I started teaching when we came back from those conferences. And then my brother mentored me, and I ended up just picking up where he left off. He went to college, and so I became the youth leader at that point. So that was about 19 years old. So I'd say 19, 20.
Your older brother, Philip?
Philip, that was here. Yeah, so it was so cool. Yeah, and it's so cool to see, him sitting here, even for the service, right, and just being able to support me when I'm preaching. That was huge for my heart, right, because he was very formative for me, especially at that younger age. He would be the one that asked me all the hard questions, right, why do you believe what you believe, right? What would you say with this or that? So he was just really good at challenging, but in a good way, in a loving way, right? So I really attribute a lot of that faith to my growth, at least to my brother. Yeah. So that was huge. And so I think that's about 20-ish, in the mid-20s, I was went to Cal Poly Pomona, did communication, because I promised myself I would not be poor, right? I was like, I want the money, right? I grew up in a pastor's household, which the income was, we always had food, right? We never went hungry. We always wore secondhand clothes. There are pictures where I would literally say, who's that little girl? And they're like, that's you wearing your sister's jacket, right? I'm like, oh man, thank you, right? I'm in a pink fluffy jacket.
A little self-burn.
Self-burn, exactly. Walked right into that one. Yeah. But so there's some really amazing, like 4-year-old pictures where I'm wearing my sister's jacket, and it's just hilarious. That's not your little sister, that's you, Nate. So that happened, but essentially I went after like the banking. I went into kind of marketing. So I did communication, went to marketing at a credit union for a while. And then even there, I was still serving in the church as youth leading. And as they groomed me towards kind of what they would call like bank representative there at the church, there was a time when a parting voice had to happen. Essentially, if I went into what I always dreamed of, which is being a bank rep and earning untold amounts of money, there's like you can earn commission and everything like that. It was great. It was like everything I wanted. And again, I was working for 2 years, so I knew the ins and outs of this church, the bank. And eventually it came to the point where they said, hey, what do you think? You could do this, but it also means you're traveling a lot. I won't be youth leading. I won't be in the ministry anymore. I wasn't getting paid at the youth ministry. It's just volunteer work. And here I'm getting paid lots of money, right? So it's just like pretty obvious. I want to get paid lots of money. And then I said, no thanks, right? Which was the weirdest thing in my head, right? I'm like, that's not what I wanted to come out of me. But in my heart, it was just like, I can't do this. Like, all right, God, this is kind of like that push come to shove moment, the moment of truth, right? Like, is this really what I believe? And if it is, will I be willing to push all the chips across the table, right? And would I be willing to give all in? So that's at the age of 26. I quit my job at the bank, And then literally a week later, I was digging holes at a construction site because I was an intern, and that was one way to make money to pay for rent. So like from a bank, really cush job to what am I doing digging holes in Temecula? It's crazy. Yeah, exactly. In summer, which is nuts. I got like 3 shades darker, so it was pretty crazy. So that was nuts.
So that's kind of how you got interested. What is I mean, you've worked some different jobs. So you want to talk a little bit maybe about what your church plant? I know you did church planting for a while, and just maybe what that looked like, and
for sure.
And then also just maybe the last couple of jobs you've been doing with the national district and stuff.
Yes,
I would love to hear that.
Absolutely. So let's see. I worked in Temecula as a church planter intern for a while, and then did some youth ministry in that regard. Had a rough time just because I came from a small church to big church, right? And big church, we're talking like for me was like 400, 500 people. That's pretty big, right? From a 30. And so starting up a youth group was different than maintaining one.
For sure.
So all of that was rocking me, but in my heart, here's the core of it. Like I felt like in the youth group, there were young people growing to become adults, and they didn't have the church. And I knew that I had to plant a church for them and their peers, and that was really the heart drive for me, right? Creating a space where they could be the church and not just youth group, right? So that was what I set out to do, but I needed to learn a lot, and so I took that couple of years to learn from this church plant. Then I launched out with a buddy of mine, a Filipino friend, and we launched out in Anaheim area, and we were doing like park community centers at first. We bounced around to hotels, and one Sunday we'd meet in the park, and we would just volleyball, barbecue, invite folks up, and people were just hanging out. And then we said, hey, next Sunday we're meeting at this hotel, look us up online and meet us here at this time, right? It was so cool. It was kind of like a meetup party, right? And basically we would rotate between community centers, and then there was like even different hotels we would meet at. And eventually we landed in a church. And to tell you the truth, Logan, like the best times were the park and the community centers.
Well, the park sounds like men's retreat.
Plug it in, man. Exactly. Because those are the moments where people are like, you guys are a church? What are you guys doing here at Sunday morning, right? Like, aren't you supposed to be in like one of those buildings?
Building here?
So it was super cool. They were barbecuing, we were playing volleyball with them. We did pickup games and basketball with folks. And so it was just cool to be amongst people who would never shadow the doors of a church. And so that was super fun. As a matter of fact, I felt that was the most energy of our church plant. And then when we got into like a church building, it was just kind of like, it was an exhale because we felt good, but sometimes feeling good isn't what we're called to, and I think that's the tough part about church, right? So we'll get into that a little bit more later. But
sometimes like working out in Temecula, doing construction, right? Doesn't always feel good. That's the right thing.
Dude, you're absolutely right. Like the best parts, the best conversations with me and some of these construction guys who ask real questions, like you just wouldn't get in a very sanitized perspective, right? But I loved it because it just engaged reality. Like, well, if God is real, then why this or why that, right? And it's just really good. And we were doing this over like a double at Carl's Jr., right? So that's to me like ministry. That was life, right? I just breathed life into my life, right? Of like God in every place. So and then church plant was 7 years in, did that, and then we found it was mostly Asian Americans, so there was like Filipinos, Cambodians, Chinese, lots of next gen, right? So we're all English speaking. We found though that what was challenging was we had landed in Anaheim and people were coming as far as Eastvale, which is like 45 minutes away, and others, like some of our worship leaders were coming out of like Long Beach, Lakewood area. That was really a stretch, not only for them but for the people that would come with them, or even those that would they would invite. Like, why would you drive an hour away, right?
Long Beach,
exactly. So it was just tough. And then as they had kids, I could see that it was like church was just weighing heavily upon them, right? And I didn't want church to be a burden as much as it's supposed to bring life to us, right? So we had to rethink it, and we ended up figuring, we can't really land it in any of these spots. So we had to pretty much dissolve it at that point. This is 2014. It was a heartbreak. My heart was broken over it. It wasn't just a quick, pull on the plug. We all made this decision together. So it was like we gathered, we met. It wasn't just like, oh, one day I just come up, guys, we're done, right now. So it was a journey. But we all, I made sure I wanted to see some of them definitely see them into different churches that they were going to. Make sure that they're connected. So they're all well taken care of. But yeah, once it got 2-3 kids in, it was just harder and harder to get people out, right?
Yeah.
We're meeting at 9 a.m., so they're getting out of the house like ridiculous times,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, yeah. Our people here understand that for sure.
Totally,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, we were like a 5 to 10 minutes late kind of church. For
Totally
sure. It's
good,
like, gotta get the kids out the door, and it's hard enough. You live 5 minutes away.
Totally,
for sure.
man.
And so after that, you did you land straight away at that national level district?
Yeah, so what ended up happening was in the transition, because I was church planting with my co-pastor, and we both had to raise support, so we had to do like other work, right, to obviously make up for the compensation that we had at least put food on the table for.
Yeah.
So I worked full-time job doing like probation or counseling for kids on probation out in Long Beach area and like Norwalk. So that was some stuff I did there. So that was about 2 years. And then from there I got a proposition from the national office to do candidate development, which is essentially people who are going into ministry. Yeah. Right. And what I do is help to prepare for the interview and prepare for everything in that effect. So I did that for like 6 years. The beautiful thing about that was, for me, this is really meaningful because I'm preparing now missionaries who are going overseas to do what those missionaries did for my dad, right? So it was like a full circle. That's cool. So yeah, for me, the Alliance has just been like ingrained deeply in me, right? Like their heart for discipleship and missions has been just my heartbeat, and I feel like that's what this is, right? Missions and really discipleship. And so like I could not go anywhere else. Like for me, I was like bought, sold. I'm like, even before I was born, I was Alliance, right? Yeah. So like it's pretty much there. And I just see God moving in that. And so when I was able to send some of these missionaries back, there's times when I'm shedding tears with these guys, praying with them, like, you're gonna do for somebody 2 generations down, which you don't even know. It's like blows your mind, right? Like that missionary that helped my dad come to know Christ did not know that I would be here in an Alliance church 2 generations down, right? So for me to help them move overseas to bring the word to unknown places, dude, that was a beautiful job. So 6 years, I said I would have done this for free, man. Like I loved it so much. So did that, and then I also did Cambodian district work. So the Cambodian churches have a network. I help the next gen leaders pretty much get discipled and kind of walk with them on their journey.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, so it's kind of a picture of what Nate's been up to the past, 20 years.
That's me in a nutshell. Wow, 20 years.
That's what he's been busy at.
Yep.
Well, awesome. Well, I'd also just love to, you mentioned like your wife couldn't join us today.
Jasmine.
But I'd love just maybe...
Yeah.
Jasmine's her name. There you go. And maybe tell what does she do?
Yes,
what is some of the stuff maybe she likes to do and that kind of stuff. And just to know her a little bit.
Yeah, Jasmine is she's awesome, man. Oh man, where do I start with her? We met at a coffee shop, which is really crazy. She was discipling girls back then. I was don't do this. It's just not suggested for you to. Do not do this at home. Let's put it that way, right? It was totally. I knocked her books on accident over, and the next thing you know, we had this big accident. Right? But she had these books on discipleship, and she back then was discipling some girls in her church, and I was just getting out of youth ministry at that time. Remember, I was transitioning. So my office was the coffee shop, and so we ended up talking about ministry, like what do you do to disciple? And she said, what do you do to disciple? We ended up talking for like 2 hours. And she's Vietnamese American, second gen as well. Her parents are immigrated over. Very similar story to mine. First language is a different language. I'm Cambodian by background, so we've totally just connected heart-wise, right? Just on our story. Next thing you know, we're talking and find out that she's a respiratory therapist, so she works at a hospital with NICU kids, so babies that are premature would always end up in her space. So she's been doing that for the last 14 years now, and really good at it. She's super hands-on, so much so that CrossFit is her favorite thing. She's a big CrossFit fan, so she could definitely beat me up. Let's put it that way. I think she could. There's no question there. I'm not the fighter. She would be. So don't mess with her. She's doing the Olympic weightlifting stuff, and I'm like, dude, that's nuts. So I'm just gonna calisthenics is good for me, and a run, jogging. Yeah, I'm good with that. Right? Give me a speed walking. Right, just one of those. This is where I live, right? So, but yeah, that's her. Family is still local here in Pomona area too. So yeah, awesome. She grew up in that area too. Yeah. So. And
you guys are expecting a surprise and
right? We've been married for 9 years, so that's a huge surprise because we're saying, God, if it's your will, we were looking at adoption and praying about it. But after 9 years, God gave us this gift of a little boy, and we are now 35 weeks in, so super stoked, very nervous, very scared. Am I gonna do this wrong? What is gonna I hope I don't break it.
You can't hand the tree back to the parents, right? If your baby's broken, it's crying.
Yeah,
Sorry.
right.
Yeah.
Here. So super nervous, but loving it all the same. So yeah, that's where we're at now. Just getting the nursery together and getting gifts from folks, and it's just a real blessing.
Awesome. Awesome. That's super cool. Well, we do have some questions written by some of our very own.
Some deep questions, I'm expecting.
Super deep questions.
Right.
I'll start with Doug's because he is filming, and I want him to make me look good
Thank you,
on
Doug.
film, obviously. So he's also wearing UCLA hats.
I love it.
That's a big win.
I got to be careful about what I say here now.
Maybe my question for you is, how do you cheer for UCLA versus USC? This is really the most important question you can answer.
And you see, this is the part of it. The best part is like I'm not a big super so this I'm easily swayed to anything. Like that's the hard part too, right? So I would love to hear more about this. So this is where you guys can like disciple me in.
Well, yeah,
I'm good with UCLA. Yeah, I'm totally cool with UCLA.
Yeah, great. That's what I want.
So super open to this.
Yeah, just don't talk about the other people.
Yeah.
The truth. Yeah.
They know the truth. They just refuse.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where you guys are going to disciple me because sports
in the ways of UCLA.
In the ways of UCLA.
Of the Bruins. San Francisco Giants or 49ers fan. That's
the Dodger fandom here is really strong.
Okay, I can see why.
Yeah, it's a big thing.
It makes sense to me. I'm LA, so that works.
It makes sense. Yeah, my Angels not so hot, but but anyways, Doug's question for you is: in ministry, what are you most passionate about? What are you most passionate about in ministry?
Good question. What am I most passionate about? I would say definitely discipleship, just because it's been done well for me in my own life. If someone paying attention to my spiritual growth and walking with me in it, I think that's the heart of it. Like someone just being able to walk with me and saying, how do I see God intersect with my life, and then just process things with. So that has just been done well from my mentor, from my brother, from my dad in his own ways because he was a little bit more busy, but I just watching him. So I would say just being able to connect with someone at that level of what's happening in your life, how do you see God connect here, and just helping others really discover how active God is in our life, right? And how much involvement He wants to form and shape us into someone that is not yet, right, His child, right? So to me, that's the biggest thing. Yeah, discipleship, I would say. Really passionate about it. I just feel like God has, like I was even in the sermon talking about how God individually knit us, and so He has something for each of us. And for me, if I could help you discover that, that's it. That's game over for me. Like I love that. Lights me up, right? Like I love that if I can help someone get to that next step God has for them, I'm happy, right? Whatever that may look like. So yeah,
awesome.
That would say that would be the passion.
Awesome. Love to hear that. Some questions from Chuck and Annie, who you haven't met yet.
Sure.
They're great. The Matthew clan can be very clearly seen here by the frizzy hair.
Okay.
There's a bunch of them running around.
I will look for the frizzy hairs.
Yes, you'll recognize them right away.
That's awesome.
But Chuck, who loves playing instruments, he does ask, do you play any musical instruments?
I do some guitar, but just some cheater chords. So Chuck, you maybe could. Again, I'm very open to discipleship, right? UCLA discipleship from here.
Yep.
A guitar, I'd love to pick that up further. I do have a couple of songs in my belt, but they are, the pretty cheater chords. I'll tell you, you know what I'm talking about with the cheater chords. It's the C, D, E.
Well, it's basically like any Christian song
basically,
ever written,
the four chords, right? And you just over and over. Just
again.
different words.
Yeah. What sports do you like? Or if you like sports at all?
I do like sports. I like playing football.
Okay.
As just pickup games, those were always fun for me. So, and I think you played too. So,
I did, yeah.
Yep. So I mean, obviously I'm not built like a football player, so I'd be running like crazy for my life when they're coming after me, right? So I'm just getting out there. But I love playing it. Yeah.
Yeah. What about this? This is my favorite question from Chuck.
Sure.
What always makes you smile?
What always makes me smile? Yeah, okay, Marvel action figures. Now, this is the weirdest thing, right? Yeah, so believe it or not, again, super geek. I always joke that if my wife met me in high school, she's the basketball, gal, volleyball gal. She was always on point with all those things. She would have probably shoved me up against the locker and made all my comic books fall out of my hands because I was that kid with the braces and the glasses and my comic books and a handful of them running down the aisle, right? And so, I'm glad she met me when I was later in my life. She would have, a little bit more meat on the bones. Yeah, so I would say some comic book Marvel stuff just makes me excited.
Well, that's like popular now.
I know,
cool.
and it's so cool that nerds are popular.
Nerds are popular.
That wasn't the case when I was.
If only you know.
If only I was born later.
Yeah, 40 years too late.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally good.
There you go. So this is a question from Annie Matthews,
Yes.
who's Chuck's wife.
Yep.
This is an interesting question. What is your favorite thing about church?
Favorite thing about church? I would say the community for sure. If I look back, there is so much deep community and love, and just growing through life together, right? Like good and bad. I mean, people dying and being able to support them and walk with them through this and see them grow to the other side of that. My father having cancer and seeing the church rally around and people praying with him. The best thing about church is community, and I really think that's reflected even in who God is, right? Like Trinity, like that's Him sharing with us what it is, and it's people from all walks of life, which is the best part, right? Like, you know, poor to rich, you know, black, white, Asian, Mexican, everything, right? Like it's, you know, just the beauty of this collective, and I think the church should represent God in that way, right? Like it should be an organization and an organism that is unique from everything else, right? Like I can't see any other place like it, right? Where people come together to not only know God better, but to bring Him to the world that is hurting and lost. So for me, that it all comes to this community, right? And what is this community about? So for me, when I say community, it's like, how much do I really, am I going to call you, Logan, at 2 a.m. when if there's someone I really, really desperately need? That to me is the community that I'm talking about, right? Like the people you would call, because those are the people who would help you move when you there's people like if you're moving, Chuck or Jack or Mike or whoever is not going to show up, but this guy will, right? And that's the guy you're talking about for community. Right.
That's great.
That's what I would say.
That's such a big thing at Cornerstone here is community. And I love that.
Yep.
Annie asked, and we'll finish kind of on a lighter note here.
Yeah.
If you're on a desert island,
anything that starts with a desert island, it's going to be something weird.
You want. Maybe we can narrow this down to like, what two maybe songs, like one Christian song. And
oh
one
man,
song.
that's so good.
What is your favorite Christian and non-Christian? That's a little easier.
I can always change this.
There's some real duds on some of those.
There are some real.
There's some real bad
CD.
ones. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the last CD I even had. Oh my goodness. I'm like.
I think
why not MP3s?
Was the last one.
Reliant K. That says a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe just it could be on Spotify. If you have a Spotify playlist and there's only one Christian song, one non-Christian song on there.
Songs or like artists? I'm thinking artists.
Okay.
Artists
are fine too.
Actually, I really was a fan of U2. I mean, this shows my age, but U2 was a big there's a bunch of songs in there that really I think cut across the lines for me, and like as far as just that goes. Actually was a fan of Linkin Park. There's some things I liked about Linkin Park. Yeah. So those, I mean, it's gonna be a tough one to choose between those. Like I'm a Christian, like Christian bands. I actually really like Reliant K. They did some really good stuff. I like Switchfoot too.
Switchfoot? They played at CU one time.
They did.
Live.
Oh man.
I got really close to whatever the dude's name is.
Yeah. Cool. Shoot, his name just slips my mind. I remember he went off on his own too, and he did his own standalone.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was actually really good too. So I like a lot of that. So those would be some of the bands I would resonate with.
There you go, Annie. That's his favorite songs.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
Well, awesome. Well, that's the questions I have for you, Nate.
Good.
Thanks so much for answering. Thanks for speaking with us today. And
thank you,
guys. Nate's been so flexible throughout this whole process. I mean, we've been talking with Nate for a long time. Me and him.
This has been great.
We spent a lot of hours together. I mean, over
we clocked some good hours.
We talked a lot.
We had taco together.
We had tacos. I
Dude.
mean, like, what else bonds you more than eating tacos?
Tacos. That's so true. It was some good tacos, actually.
They're good tacos.
Yeah.
So. Well, thanks so much for watching this guy's video. You guys, and we will hope to see Nate more around very soon. And,
I hope so.
Yeah, and we'll see you guys on Sunday.